We actually have 7 organizations at the table representing 6 disorders because, as you'll see, there are 2 organizations that represent one of the disorders. So I'm going to start off and just have everyone take their turn and explain who they are and how long they've been in existence and whatever else they'd like to say. So we're going to start with Tracy Hard from OIF.
Hey. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you so much for having us. And I just want to say before we get started that I think we all find ourselves in very good hands, and we're so excited. And it makes our job as your partners in science to go back to our patient communities with just enthusiasm and excitement. And I'm very inspired. So I think I'm speaking for all of us, hopefully. I'm Tracy Hard. I'm the CEO of the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation. We are headquartered in Gaithersburg, Maryland, which is outside of Washington, D.C. We were founded in 1970 by a desperate mom who was looking for support, and she was looking for a treatment for her son, who was born with OI in the late 60s. Pre-social media days, she wrote a letter to Facebook, or not Facebook, Redbook, Redbook magazine, really just telling her story and looking for support. She was flooded with letters from parents from all parts of the country. A year later, the OI Foundation was formed. We have a very active patient community. That's something that has been constant since we were formed in 1970. Speaking of Facebook, we are very active on social media. We have about 4,000 people on our Facebook forum. So our patient community is very supportive of one another. Charlene, do you want me to go through the questions that we have?
No, we'll each do a little introduction and then go back. So next, Sarah Ziegler with the MHE Research Foundation.
I'm co-founder of the MHE Research Foundation. My son was diagnosed at 18 months. He's now going to be 22. I was given a paragraph out of a textbook and 6 different names for the same disease, I later found out. So I put up a web page and found some other families. And now, 15 years later, we have a very broad and extensive mission, which is for the basic research. We have 3 of our researchers here today, Yu Yamaguchi, Mauricio, and Jeff Esco. And we work directly with them to also get tumor samples, blood samples, and clinical information, as well as taking the publications that they do and publish, and then bringing them to the medical community. Because the medical community, orthopedic community, orthopedic surgeons don't have time. They have lots of patients, so we bring the information directly to them. So our foundation also attends every major orthopedic conference. We're now this year also going to spread it out to Europe and go to the European Pediatric Orthopedic Conference in Greece. And then we have an extensive network for families, and our advisory board members have made sure that they write down what needs to be done in a doctor's office so that we can get the correct diagnoses for our families. And then our foundation also refers patients that come to us to the individual specialists that they need.
Thank you. Okay, the next presentation will be Debra Stick, who is the founder and chairman of Soft Bones.
I, too, would just like to echo a word of thank you to the organizers of the event. Soft Bones was founded in 2009, and we're a 501c3 organization. I am the desperate mom who was losing her mind when her son wasn't meeting milestones, and at 18 months, he was diagnosed with hypophosphatasia. Being that it was a word that I could hardly pronounce and spell at the time, we decided to simplify our organization and call it Soft Bones. We are the first U.S. hypophosphatasia foundation here in the U.S. We actually work with patient groups around the world, in groups in France with Hypophosphatasia Europe, with a German group, as well as a group in Japan. And we're starting to form an alliance to really help to share materials and speak in one voice to educate, empower, and connect patients, doctors, researchers, caregivers, to make sure that we all are providing, medically validated information to our patients to make sure that they have the best information available to them. Again, I think that our focus right now is on research, education. We do some policy work as well as helping to just support the patient community and to unite them to help them feel like they're not alone in this rare disease.
Thank you. Now, there is another organization that's focusing on hypophosphatasia, and David Heaps, who's sitting at the end of the table, will be next.
Thank you. My name is David Heaps. I'm a co-founder of HPP Choose Hope. I was diagnosed last March with hypophosphatasia, and my genetic test came back that I have the infantile form. And as we researched, just like every patient organization here, the disease, we found not very much information about it, and especially when it came to the adult side. And my wife and I felt very passionate about becoming involved, not only to aid soft bones and other rare diseases in having a voice, but to raise money and awareness because these diseases are just as important as the diabetes, as the cancers, as the major diseases that are out there, and we're here to help give it a voice. We were founded, as I say, last March. We were diagnosed, and our corporation was functional in September, and we have filed for our 501c3. We're just waiting for the final approval.
Thank you. The next two presenters work together, and the first would be Jack Kelly, who's sitting right here next to me, and he's the president of the Lymphangiomatosis and Gorham's Disease Alliance.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Charlene. I would like to add our thanks also to Dr. Waldman for presenting today about Gorham's disease and generalized lymphatic anomaly. The lymphangiomatosis, which is a term that Matt doesn't like, but
John.
Right. Nonetheless, it is a term that is still used, and Gorham's disease. These two diseases are lymphatic-based. They're very closely related, we think. But the foundation was started by my daughter, who was diagnosed with first Gorham's disease and then lymphangiomatosis when she was about 9 years old. She experienced a lot of fear and desperation when she would talk to doctors. As she grew older, she realized that there really was no one interested in her disease. So she started this foundation for the primary purpose of helping others find doctors, find access to care, and to create a community of patients that could talk to each other so they wouldn't feel alone. That was the basis, the general mission of the foundation, and it still is the same today. We're a patient community.
Thank you.
I'm
sorry.
I just
Sorry.
want to add a couple of other things. My daughter, it took her 20 years to find her first patient, to locate another patient with her disease. 20 years. It took her another 5 years before she met another patient with her disease face to face. And so lastly, I wanted to mention that we work very closely with another foundation whom you'll hear from next, as a family who also has been diagnosed with our disease.
The next presenter is Tiffany Ferry of the Lymphatic Malformation Institute. Tiffany?
My name is Tiffany Ferry, and I, like Jack, have a daughter who is diagnosed with GLA, lymphangiomatosis. We were told at the time, at the same age 9. Jack was, I found him immediately on the internet, and he was doing a wonderful job, along with his daughter, of handling the patient support piece. We wanted to impart some sort of change on the path that this disease family was taking, so we created a research foundation. So our entire focus is research-based. I've got 2 scientists that solicit, review, and approve all of our grants. We've got a lot of exciting things going on right now that we've funded, mouse model, some genetic studies and things that we're hoping we can move the ball. And very lucky to have found Jack, who we've had a very nice symbiotic relationship in terms of patient support and research. So.
Thank you. Now, last but certainly not least is Becky Mock, who is the brand new president of the XLH Network. Becky?
Thank you. My name is Becky Mock, and I am the new president. I think I've been in office now for almost 2 months. But I come from 4 generations of people with XLH, my father, myself, my 2 sisters, my 2 children, my grandson. So I have a personal, deep passion to find a cure and to be sure that people who have XLH can find out that they are correctly diagnosed and what the treatments are. And I think that source of support out here is one of the main focuses of the XLH Network. We began as a listserv in 1996. We're a nonprofit. We're run by volunteers on a shoestring, as many nonprofit organizations do these days. And we are ready to step it up and strengthen and grow. There are many people that have XLH and do not know it. There are many young parents that have children with a rare disease that go to doctors that are unfamiliar with XLH, just like everyone else sitting at this table. We want to see an early and solid diagnosis and treatment put in place. There's some dramatic improvements that can come about from taking the right medicine. That doesn't mean that all of the symptoms will be addressed. My life, my children, and my grandchild's, we are all affected by chronic pain, bones that are malformed, and it's not the worst thing, but it's something that needs to have constant care and attention. So our hope is that we can become a group that takes the science jargon, translates it into some materials that the overworked GP will take and absorb and have at their fingertips. So when that young mother or father comes in with their child with bowed legs, and they are a short child who's not meeting the benchmarks, we'll say, maybe we need to look into this and we can do the blood work. And then they can connect with us on our website, come to one of our patient education efforts that we're right now looking to design and produce in this next year.
Thank you. Now, we're just going to deal with a few questions, and I'm sure that many of the answers will be similar. And perhaps, too, at the end of the time, we'd love to hear from some of you in the audience. Perhaps you have questions for some of the groups. So, first question, what is the biggest challenge you think your organization faces? Tracy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Go right ahead.
We have several challenges, but first let me just say just a couple of more things about the foundation. We consider ourselves partners in research. We have an annual scientific meeting. We have the OI registry. We have a research grant program where we give grants out to senior investigators and young investigators. We have the Link Clinical Research Centers. We have an adult health initiative. We have a family conference every 2 years where we get anywhere between 600 and 800 people at our conference. And we advocate on the federal level for increased funding for the NIH for rare bone diseases and specifically osteogenesis imperfecta research. But our challenges come from something very simple and basic is, and I don't know if we all have this issue, is that moving from pediatric care to adult care is a real issue for us right now. Finding doctors, having that multidisciplinary team when you're a child with OI and then moving into the system as an adult is really tough on our community. So that's something that we're really working very hard to recruit more physicians into our world, into our family, to do extra communication with medical professionals. So that's something that I think is our biggest challenge right now.
Thank you. Sarah?
I think one of the biggest challenges for a rare disease is getting public awareness. I think banning all of the organizations together under, a big umbrella brings public attention to it. I think that our voice needs to be in Washington. This takes a lot of money. And you can't, as an organization, put that burden on the people you are trying to help. So it's always trying to come up with the funding. And when you have an extensive program that you want to get everything taken care of, there are tough choices. So my biggest obstacle is to be able to get everything done in and never turn a family away. Never will.
Thank you.
Never.
Deb?
I agree with what both of you just said. But in addition, I go back to what Dr. Gahl said early in his talk, where he said that lack of a diagnosis leads to, doubt. And I think that for us, it's awareness and getting these folks diagnosed so that we can start that chain reaction of, more research, more funding, more awareness, and, ultimately more expertise in the field so that we can allow these patients to live the best lives that they can.
Dave?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is just communicating with the doctors on the front line. And just a short example, it took me 2 years to be diagnosed, and at the end of that 2-year process, the doctors were still telling me they didn't know what it was. And fortunately, there was one doctor that said, "I'm going to find out what is wrong with you." And he went through all my history. He found that I had low phosphorus in all my tests for the last 2 years. And he says, "We need to send you to UCLA or to the Mayo Clinic." And he said, "Before we do that, I'm going to send you to an endocrinologist." So my wife and I went to the endocrinologist, and we had no further got into his office and sat down, and he says, "You don't have hypophosphatasia, you don't have osteomalacia. I'm never going to see you again, but here's my number, and I wish you the best." Literally, that was the conversation that we had. 10 days later, we drove to UCLA Medical Center from Las Vegas, Nevada. The endocrinologist there says, "I'm admitting you right now." And 5 days later, when they discharged me and had told me that I had hypophosphatasia, and of course a genetic test followed that confirmed it, but as we drove home, we got home on a Sunday night. And that night, my phone rang at 8 o'clock at night, and it was the endocrinologist who had told me he'd never see me again, to apologize that he would do anything he could to help me. And we find this with the patients, and this is our biggest challenge, is to help the patients get to the doctors and have those doctors take us serious, that this is a disease, that we are sick. It's not something that's made up in our head. It's not something that they can just brush off and say it's another disease just to move on to another patient. They're going to recognize hypophosphatasia and treat us as such.
Thank you. Jack?
We have a lot of challenges, and they're all very large. We're really at ground zero. There's never been a natural history study of these two diseases. There are no diagnostic criteria. There are no approved therapies for our diseases. They're all off-label novel therapies. We do not have a patient registry. We do not have a tissue bank. There is no, as far as I can tell, there is no formalized lab anywhere in the world dedicated to studying our two diseases. And thank God for the Ferry family to come along to move, as Tiffany said, to move that ball down the field a little bit with the programs that are now currently funded to start all that. Dr. Kevin White said earlier, he has a favorite gene. Well, we wish we had somebody who could stand up here and say that. You know, Dr. Warman said that all of the diagnoses that are made for these two diseases are clinical. They're clinical observations, basically. There is no genetic testing for these two diseases. There are so many huge challenges, but we do credit the NIH Office of Rare Disease, Steve Groff's group. We have been recently selected for a pilot program for a patient registry, a global patient registry for our two diseases, so we're very grateful to start that.
Tiffany?
I would say from the research standpoint, obviously we have all the same issues Jack says, and those in part, researcher trying to get going. But probably the two big things would be collaboration amongst researchers and the availability of tissue. No tissue anywhere, and therefore nothing for the researchers to study. They come to us with great ideas, and then question number two is, where can you get me some tissue?
Becky?
The biggest challenge for us right now is we're all volunteers. We're scattered across the United States with one board member in the United Kingdom. We have limited funds, no staff. It's that typical startup. It's nonprofit. It's just like a business. We are blessed with having more medical advances and good researchers working on our disorder. We have an important part to play to bridge the knowledge gap between the scientists and the local pediatricians and the patients. So we have our part to play, and but that is our challenge at this time, this year.
Actually, the statements that everyone has made kind of cover the next two questions, but we can go into two topics just in a little more specific way. So the next one is, if you had one specific goal that you really thought you could achieve in reaching out to assist and educate and help patients, what would it be? I feel like I'm on a TV game show.
Well, Charlene. I think for us at the foundation, and when we do have some resources available to us, is providing information to patients in a way that they're used to. We're just starting to launch our video learning library. So we have our first, how-to video that went up on our website, which is splinting a fracture when you're, far away you're on vacation or something like that. And actually, Dr. Esposito did that for us from Omaha. So I think it's keeping up with that, using technology for our education.
Sarah?
Goal is to make sure the research into MHE to find a treatment is going forward and forward. We have right here, right now, to have to deal with the children and adults that have MHE, that have their life. And the orthopedic surgery is so intense and so debilitating in itself that a lot of our education right now also has to go to making sure, working with John Dorman's at a CHOP and Dwar Paley out of the Paley Limb Lengthening Institute to make sure that the surgical procedures that are complicated are taught to other orthopedists, and that when there's a big push within our organization and stuff to get doctors to openly refer and accept that that's maybe something that's a little bit over their head. So we can get better quality of care for people now, because actually it goes back to the research. The quality of care and the actual care that people get, it's barbaric. You should not have your child be 21 years old, which mine is, and he's going back into the OR for the 16th time. He should not have his bones have to be physically broken and have external fixators put on. He should not have to have surgery where he's screwed and plated, and the plates have to stay in and they have to come out. And he can't walk for a distance. And the bottom line is that anybody, I feel, that has any condition, they have a life. what happens with children is that they also have to go to school. So not only are they dealing with all the huge impact of the physical part, it has a price on their education, and that's lifelong. So as a parent, you have to deal with the medical, your child's in and out of surgery, and you have to keep their grades up because they have to grow up. That's it.
Thank you. Deb?
We're still a relatively young organization. We've been around for 5 years, and because we are dealing with a rare disease, I think we have a very fundamental goal of just establishing a patient community and identifying patients who are newly diagnosed, bringing them into that community, letting them know that the support network is there for them. And then from there, we can build on that foundation to help to reach out to all of the other stakeholders and to get to your level someday.
Thank you. Dave?
Agreeing with Debra is communicating with the patients, but in taking that one step further and really expanding on what I was speaking of before, and that is letting the patients know that it's okay to question their doctors. Have to take the first answer that they give them. They can question them, to not be rushed into treatments, not be rushed into the type of a wheelchair you have to have, that you question them, and to find the right physicians for this disease, and helping them be educated as to what type of physicians that we need for hypophosphatasia. That's one of the things that we're looking at doing this year with the help of UCLA Medical Center and Dr. Adams. We're exploring symposiums where we can bring in physicians that are on the front lines and helping them be able to understand what it's like as a patient and what they can do for us to better help us, and as patients what we can do to help them.
Thanks. Jack?
I was thinking of if you would imagine what it's like for a patient, and most of our patients are children. So a parent goes to a physician and has this disease and is not sure what that disease is. And in the face of the fact that we don't have diagnostic standards, it's unlikely that a physician is going to quickly make a diagnosis. It's going to require a specialist. It's going to require an interdisciplinary team of specialists. So dealing with patients is, I mean, the best thing that we can do, and we try to do, is to let the patients know where there are centers of experience. We don't call it centers of excellence because there really aren't any teams dedicated, but there are certainly places where we currently have wonderful teams in Boston, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, and Seattle that care for our patients. The thing that we're trying to do now, what we're launching with our patient community, is to stress the importance of them registering with the patient registry and being prepared and understanding the importance of donating tissue. That's how we can help the LMI with the funding mechanism that they have in place to find scientists to investigate and study the disease. That's what we're trying to do with our patient community.
Right. And Tiffany, even though your organization is research, I know you have very important thoughts on helping the patient.
Absolutely, absolutely, very important. But the best way that we can help is fostering collaboration and developing a comprehensive map of what's going on worldwide, so we're not wasting time, money, and people working in silos and not sharing information and everything that pertains to us moving forward. We've got too much stall.
Right. Becky?
I'm so glad to hear you use the word silos. That's what I feel like sometimes we all are. We focus so much on what's right in front of us. I found out about the XLH Network through the kindness of a nurse that was working in a doctor's office, and I asked her if she could help me start a support group. There had to be other parents in our state, North Carolina, that had children with XLH, and how would I ever find them? It would just be so good to talk to another parent even though my family had generations of XLH, it was, I needed to talk to other moms with children maybe the age of my children. And she said, well, you can go online and there's the XLH Network. And I said, what is that? XLH, what does that mean? And she says, it means what you have. That's a little odd. Oh, okay, that's the first time I've ever heard that. And from there, thank God for computers and websites. It's changed the way you find information, and it gives you a better opportunity to reach numerous people around the world. We have people on our listserv from how many countries, Kathy? 27 countries? 52 countries. So it's everywhere, and we have a lot of work to do, but if we can just improve our communication with our members and reach the nurses as well as the doctors, I think that that's our mission this year, for the best one this year.
Thank you. I'm going to sort of skip over the next question I had thought of, which had to do with goals in medical education, because I think it's very clear from what everyone has said that there's a tremendous challenge for all of us to reach out. I hate to use the word educate, but to communicate with physicians, because that's really essential to improve diagnosis and care. And also we want to leave a few minutes, and I hope some of you will raise some questions or thoughts, but I think that it would be interesting for each person here at the table to really comment on what they think are the advantages of collaboration, such as those of us sitting here at the table and us collaborating with those of you in the audience. Tracy.
Sure. You know, we have to collaborate. I mean, that's the way we're going to move our missions forward. If we're strength in numbers, you know, all of those terms. But you know, as I'm sitting here and we're talking, and you know, I'm talking to other people, I realize just how many of you we share.
Yeah.
And while and while that's wonderful, it's scary a little bit too, because you know, Dr. White, Dr. Warman, Dr. Byers are all on my medical advisory council. Exactly. And I'm at the Marfan's meeting, and Carolyn Levering and I were talking about you, Dr. Byers, in great detail. I mean, you all are wonderful volunteers for us, and I don't think we thank you enough for what you do for us, so thank you. But collaboration is so important, just because we need to know what each other is doing as far as the research is concerned, so that we can support one another in that way. And you know, what's going to help you or you will help us, and it's critical.
Sarah.
Well, you covered what I was going to say.
Okay.
But I did have
Okay.
one thing as an organization, you know, for the people out there that are undiagnosed and may be diagnosed, and they're sitting where I was and Jack was and others were, and saying, well, I want to do something, okay? Well, it's really nice to have you, Tracy, so I can listen to you and I can take ideas from you. And I think the support, you know, sometimes when your organization, got like a lot of little people sitting on your shoulders, okay? And the ultimate responsibility that you have is to the people you're trying to help. And having just a network between us that we support each other, I think, for me, makes me a better leader, that I can communicate my ideas better with my researchers. I can get to a meeting and I can express a viewpoint for everybody, and then get more physicians interested in OI and all the other diseases. So I think networking together, but for me personally, it's been like a huge personal benefit.
Right. Deb?
Yep. I mean, just building on what you're saying, the collaboration between our groups, you know, a lot of times patients start off down an OI path and end up on a hypophosphatasia path. So just helping patients to navigate this rare bone world is critical. But we're also able to bring together our efforts. I know several of us are coming together to hire a lobbying firm in DC. So, I mean, really just working together to align our agendas and make sure that we're collaborating where we can have the most punch and impact with the limited resources that we have. You know, also I think too that just if you paid attention to any of the presentations today, clearly there's connections across many of these diseases where we can learn from one another. So collaboration is critical there. And then finally, I think that one of the things I'm really proud of with Soft Bones is our collaboration between working with Dr. White on the academia and scientific research side, working with Alexion on the industry side, working with these other groups on the advocacy side. It's just been really an amazing experience to really see how we can all kind of play nice together in the sandbox and the patient wins.
I'm just going to take one minute, and all of you will have your say, but I just want to elaborate just for a moment on what Deb just said about hiring a lobbyist, the government affairs firm, to be a little more elegant. For 13 years in the bone field, we had a really outstanding legislative coalition called the Bone Coalition, and many of you here in this room were aware of that, and we worked very hard to advance bone research, and I think we were pretty successful. But the economy has changed, and some of the organizations, the bigger organizations that were part of the Bone Coalition, just couldn't go on with supporting it a year and a half ago. So for the last year and a half, we didn't feel we had a real presence as a field in Washington. So through the efforts of Tracy and a very wonderful firm in Washington called the Washington Strategic Consulting Group, we are putting together a small in money that is, small lobbying effort, which is going to start April 1st and will be focused on advancing rare bone research. Some of our industry friends who are sitting out in the room, and I've already talked to you, and we're going to ask you to help a little bit with this. But I mean, I've already had these private discussions, but we're going to ask you to help because, as you well know, these organizations here at the table have very little extra money to pay for this firm, but the firm is going to do this for us, so, and we hope that we will bring in a little more funding to really make this work. So, Dave.
As probably one of the newest organizations here, collaboration, I think, is extremely important. I know that as we came onto the scene, we were greeted with trepidation by some. We were embraced by others. And over time, over the last 7 months, I think the relationship between us and the research doctors that we've with the drug company Alexion, who has been just tremendous to seeing what they're doing with Deb and Soft Bones and the other organizations around the world, in Germany, in Japan, being able to not pool resources, but be able to utilize information that's already there with each other, and then allowing each of us to go out and to really focus on raising money to conquer this. But we have to work together as far as information, share it, and to Deb said, which so eloquently, I mean, the patient wins. That's the bottom line. Here's the patient. It's not about an organization. We're not a for-profit company that's out to cannibalize the other one. We're all here to help each other.
Thank you, Jack.
Before my daughter died, she met with a doctor who was a friend of hers, and he said that your disease cannot be treated by one doctor or one institution. He said that you need, when you build this foundation, you need to develop collaboration. And so she suggested, the first thing she suggested to me when she asked me to help run the foundation was to contact the Rare Bone Disease Organization. And Charlene, who was a co-founder, welcomed us there. And that's partly why I'm here today, because of the membership we had there. That's part of collaborating with disease organizations. And then beyond that, she said when she started talking to institutions like Children's Hospital of Boston and Children's Hospital of Cincinnati, she asked those physicians, those leading physicians there, she said, do you talk to the guys in Cincinnati? She said, because this is such a rare disease, you can't possibly know everything about it, because there are very few patients. So collaboration was bred into the founding of our foundation. When I met Tiffany first thing she said, we're not going to fund anything unless there's collaboration between the researchers.
Great. Tiffany?
Absolutely. And peeling away at the competition and the politics involved in a lot of this is also a huge part of getting collaboration to work and just connecting potential.
Right. Becky?
It's just too complex to do this by ourselves. I believe there's strength in coalitions. There's also, this is my place to get the crash course on how to manage and operate a rare disease organization, and I'm looking for the best models to replicate. That's my salute to all of you who've gone before, who've done a great job. Tracy. I will be looking on websites. I'll pick up every piece of information to see the best models, because there are no original ideas. There's only the best ideas. And I want to learn from the best, and I'm sitting here at the table with them.
Oh, all of those were really wonderful and very important statements. Would anyone in the audience like to either ask a question to one of our group or make a comment or anything else? Yes, in the back, in the very back.
Yeah, I'm from the Sanford-Burnham. I organized the last 3 years worth of
Oh, yeah, that's
these
meetings.
And part of the reason, it's close enough. Part of the reason I did that was I work on rare diseases, and one of the mottos we have here is collaboration, community. And initially we wanted to bring physicians and scientists and patients themselves and family advocates together. That was the important thing. And the reason I wanted to do that is because in my experience, I'm a Ph.D., not a medically trained person, but in my experience, I realized that families are just a click away from our lab. We're easily and readily accessible. And what do I hear? The same thing that Bill Gahl said. My doc doesn't know anything about this disorder, and so he doesn't feel good, and he doesn't tell me anything about it. I have to tell him about it. So the idea of collaboration, the idea of pulling all of the groups together, and you are the experts. You live with this every day. So you're really the experts. We're, in some sense, learning from you. So one of the ideas that I've had for a while is that you want to support research. You want to support the communication. You want to get that communication across in the most effective way you can. And I was on a conference call that involved Francis Collins, who's, as you probably know, the director of NIH. And we all had the question, is what's the most effective thing you think we can do to secure or to guarantee or to enhance funding? He says, to politicians, what makes the most impact are stories, anecdotes.
Right.
You go in there, you tell a story from the heart that's something that involves you, and that makes a difference. So I have this idea. There are some politicians who are on key committees. Some of them are probably favorable. I don't think at the moment we have a big congressional or Senate champion for NIH and for medical research in general. We need one. How do we get them? I'd suggest that what we can do is, among the groups, you find you have a compelling story in a district that's important for us to get some recognition in, and if there is a scientist from wherever that you, as a constituent of that individual, you go to that office with that scientist, with that physician, you bring them in together and you say, look, there's only a couple of people in the world working on this disorder. And if we didn't have this person here, we wouldn't be at first base. We wouldn't know where to go. And you know that's true. Whether it can be done, whether it can be molded effectively, how long something like that would take, I have no idea. But the kinds of things that you present here are the kinds of things that we as scientists, because we're told, you don't get out there enough. You don't tell your story well enough that the individuals, that the common person gets it, because you're talking in science speak. You've got the reality. We've got the reality. We can make the connection. And that's the thing that will raise the awareness, I think, at a ground level and improve it.
Thank you. These are just exactly the kinds of ideas that we really hope and expect that this firm who's going to be working for us this year will work on doing. Yes. Oh.
How many of you work or have worked with the Genetic Alliance, and what's your experience been?
The question is, for us, is how many of us have worked with the Genetic Alliance?
I've worked with Sharon on a number of initiatives. She's great, and she's very aggressive in a good way, you know, about communicating, and we've been a part of a number of their initiatives. Is there a reason, Dr. Byers? I mean, what's your thought?
Well, I mean, one of the things is that there's a, you know, as you've experienced and many of the other organizations that we worked experience with, is that there's a real learning curve in how to get to where you want to go. And the Genetic Alliance was put together, actually Sharon is, I think, the second director. There was a long directorship before that. That, at least when she started, there were 600 rare disease organizations that were all part of the same thing, with the idea of pooling the experience of how to get, you know, first of all, so that there wasn't duplication of things that could be done a single time. But there was also a way to learn about how to create peer groups. I'd suggest you call them peer groups, not support groups. Support is one thing, which is it has to do with the relationship among the people in the group. But the peer group recognizes that it's something that's working on behalf of everybody there. I think it has a slightly different character to it. But they've had a lot of experience in that organization, the Genetic Alliance, in trying to put things together, trying to provide the directions for how to create organizations and how to get them running, how to create medical advisory groups, how to get physicians, local physicians involved in doing things like that. Whether or not some of the things, I mean, you know, the frustration that the local physician doesn't know what you have, you're not going to fix that. So what are the resources for doing things, and how do you create ways to go about it? So they've had a lot of experience in trying to put that together. What I'm not sure about is how effective they are, and whether they're effective at the ground roots level, or the grassroots level, or whether they've really sort of turned, as Sharon's become the director of it, more towards sort of lobbying at different levels. But an organization like that should be invaluable, and it should be something that provides you with the blueprints for going together. I think that the relationship that Tiffany and Jack have in terms of fundraising, and perhaps David and Debra have, I'm not sure, is that, you know, the separation between a largely fundraising group that is not concerned with interactions, basically is not trying to create peer interactions, but really is solely fundraising, has been achieved at some level and with some value, I think, by the OI Foundation, the Children's Brittle Bone Foundation. I don't know how well that's worked out at this point. But that separation is a very interesting one. It's a very interesting model of how to do things, because it takes fundraising out of or at least fundraising for research out of the bailiwick of what you do, and has, you know, gives that kind of differentiation help to do. But so I think that there are resources, there are people around who've been through this, and trying to use them may be very helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gahl.
I'd first like to agree wholeheartedly with what Huck said, and to point out that there is a caucus in Congress for orphan and rare diseases that has the clout to require the Food and Drug Administration to defend themselves for not bringing rare disease drugs to market soon enough, and not soon enough even compared to the way it is done in Europe. In addition, bringing patients to Congress is an incredibly powerful thing.
And I personally don't think that the directors of our institutes do enough. Again, I'm sure this isn't recorded.
Well, they don't do it. We do it.
So people have to do that.
We plan to have exactly such a day this summer.
Right. And this is a very opportune time, because as a nation, we're really questioning the value of government. And if the value of government isn't seen here in this room, and the support that's needed by individuals who have rare diseases, I don't know where it's seen. And then just a couple of practical issues. If you're ever able to get an intramural NIH scientist to engage in your disease, remember that scientist, she or he is tenured,
We have done that.
has access to the clinical center, and all the protocols that are run at the clinical centers provide free care for patients. So that essentially leverages your money approximately maybe tenfold or so. And the final thing I mentioned is that if you can support fellows in research in laboratories of anywhere around the country, those fellows not only do the work that is pertinent to your disorders for those 3 years or so that they're funded, but many of them will dedicate their lives to your disorder and rare disorders in general. So those are ways to leverage your money.
Thank you so much. Well, it's 5:30, so I think that we should really conclude what's been a most wonderful, wonderful day. And again, thanks to all of our group and to Dr. Millán again. Did you want to? Oh, sure. Sarah wants to say something.
You know what, I gotta thank you, Hud, okay, and you, because actually, you know, Nord, Charlene, when Rare Disease Day was up, okay, where our organizations, you know, were bringing out that day, and I don't know if you remember that I emailed individuals from our advisory board and other researchers that I knew, and HUD, immediately, okay, you were right there. You were right there. And actually, remember the first one? It was like, when I was moving to Florida, we did it off my BlackBerry. And every year you're there. So honestly, from day one, square one, you know, this is National Disease Day. So, that's it.
Okay. Again, thanks to everyone.
Great, that was great.
Okay.